Last time I asked you to do it yourself, to read about protein synthesis and cell division. It's maybe a little bit boring, so I'd rather have you maybe reading by yourself a little more. It's maybe not directly related to anatomy or physiology, but it helps to understand some processes. And anyway, probably you already studied this at school, maybe just refreshing. This is a video. I don't know if you watch it by yourself. So we will watch a video. Probably you can explain much better than I can do it. See versus picture. Okay, so please pay attention to the video. This is about protein synthesis.
Here is a cell, the basic unit of all living tissue. In most human cells, there is a structure called the nucleus. The nucleus contains the genome. In humans, the genome is split between 23 pairs of chromosomes. Each chromosome contains a long strand of DNA, tightly packaged around proteins called histones. Within the DNA are sections called genes. These genes contain the instructions for making proteins. When a gene is switched on, an enzyme called RNA polymerase attaches to the start of the gene. It moves along the DNA, making a strand of messenger RNA out of free bases in the nucleus. The DNA code determines the order in which the free bases are added to the messenger RNA. This process is called transcription. Before the messenger RNA can be used as a template for the production of proteins, it needs to be processed. This involves removing and adding sections of RNA. The messenger RNA then moves out of the nucleus into the cytoplasm. Protein factories in the cytoplasm, called ribosomes, bind to the messenger RNA. The ribosome reads the code in the messenger RNA to produce a chain made up of amino acids. There are 20 different types of amino acid. Transfer RNA molecules carry the amino acids to the ribosome. The messenger RNA is read 3 bases at a time. As each triplet is read, a transfer RNA delivers the corresponding amino acid. This is added to a growing chain of amino acids. Once the last amino acid has been added, the chain folds into a complex 3D shape to form the protein.
So this is a very summarized explanation. I would suggest maybe while you read, take notes, make your own memos, so that then when you have to study for the final exam, it's much easier. Remember, I'm not going to ask you about many details, okay? Just to have an idea, a general idea of everything. For protein synthesis, the same. For cell division, the same. You don't need to know very detailed things, okay? Just the general idea is all right. Don't forget to swipe your ID for attendance if you are in this class. And I think you don't have...
Yeah.
Okay, so I prepared this one. Maybe every time you can just sign and put the date that the year comes, so that you all sign the same paper. Otherwise I will... We're having lots of papers. Okay. So today we are going to go a little more into anatomy, at least the introduction part. We're going to see you today about the tissues, the body tissues. Okay. So we have review about the cells, general things about the cells, different types of cells. When these cells they group together, cells that are similar in structure and their function, then they will produce a tissue. Okay. There are basically 4 major types of tissue. Each is specialized in certain functions. We have the epithelial tissue, basically covering. Yes, do you want to say something?
They are in surface.
Yes, exactly. Not only here, our skin. We will see all the types of epithelial tissue as well. Inside the body. Okay. The other one is the connective tissue. Okay. Can you imagine what kind of basic function connective tissue may have? They will provide support. Okay. Muscle tissue. This one is maybe easy.
Like tendon? Is it tendon is muscle tissue?
No, that would be connective. But the biggest function of the muscle tissue, how do you get here? You walk, you run, you do movement, right? This is thanks to your muscles. But we will see there are different types of muscles because you're alive, because your heart is beating. And your heart is also a muscle. Okay? And the 4th is the nervous system. Okay, so in general, a nervous tissue will control all aspects in your body. So we mentioned, first we'll see about epithelial tissue. Okay, as he has mentioned, they will be covering and also lining some organs. And there's a special type of epithelial tissue which is called the glandular epithelium, the glandular tissue, that forms different types of glands in the body. Glands. Like sweat glands, oil glands, or the ones in the endocrine system, these type of glands. We'll see a little more in a few minutes. Okay, so basically the function of epithelial tissue would be protect, because it's not only covering your body, but it will protect you from external damage, either bacteria, virus, and so on, and keep everything within your body, contained, right? It also has some absorption functions, filtration, and secretion, okay, depending on where is located these tissues. Okay. Some special characteristics of this tissue is that they will form a continuous sheet. Okay, it's like a sheet. And each cell next to the other cell, neighboring cells, will be joined, will be bound together at different points. Right? We have one cell, another cell. So in order to have this sheet-like structure, you have to join them, right? Using different types of junctions. We mentioned these ones in the previous class. So there are 2 sides, the apical surface, which is the one exposed to the exterior, or here in the skin, this would be the apical surface. Okay, apical. Yes. It's exposed to the exterior, or it could be also the cavity if it's lining an internal organ. Imagine the stomach. So in the inside, it's also covered. In this case, we call it lining. Okay, it's covered by these cells of this tissue. And this is towards the inside of the organ, right? But this is the exterior as well. You know, it's connected and it's connected to the outside. So that's the apical surface. And the lower surface will rest on a structure called the basement membrane. This basement membrane is what is going to connect it to the underlying structures. One very important characteristic of the epithelial tissue is that it has no blood supply of its own. And this is very important. When they don't have blood supply, we say it's avascular, meaning not vascular. Okay? So how these tissue then gets their resources if it doesn't have a blood supply? So it will come through capillaries underneath the tissue, will diffuse from the capillaries beneath it. Okay? Later on we will see how this happens. The last one is that classification will be according to the arrangement of the layers and the shape of the cells. Okay, so there are different types of epithelial tissue. And here comes. We say layers, so you can have only one layer of cells, or you can have two or more layers of cells. So very simple. If it's only one layer, it's simple. Okay, and if it's more, we'll see the other ones. If we have more, it's stratified. And we mentioned it's according to the layers and to the shape of the cells. So the cells could be flat, then we call them squamous. Could be like a dice, cuboidal, like a cube. Or it could be like a column, so we will call them columnar. All of them only one layer. Okay? So these type of tissue, the simple epithelia, because it's very thin, usually will be related to absorption, absorb something, to secrete substances, or to filtrate, like the one in the kidney. Okay, it will filtrate. For example, the simple squamous epithelium, only one layer of flat cells, is involving diffusion, filtration, and secrete substances in certain types of membranes. For example, in your lung, the air sac or the alveoli, the space where there is exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide, this can happen because it's a very thin layer. The walls of the capillaries, the tiny vessels that you have, is one layer. Another type, the cuboidal, the simple, only one layer, simple cuboidal epithelium. This is involved in secretion, absorption. Sometimes it may have cilium. It could be ciliated. In that case, this is to move, yes, to move detritus or other foreign substances, to propel, to move the mucus outside the body. And you can find this type of tissue in the glands and their ducts. The ducts is like the connection between the gland and the exterior, okay, how the secretion is going outside. What else? And columnar, the simple columnar epithelium, this is also involved in secretion, absorption. They may be ciliated to propel the mucus or reproductive cells. So these ones, if you see, are covering or lining the digestive tract. Okay, from the stomach till the end, to the anus. Another type is not clearly visible as the previous one, like the cuboidal or columnar. If you see here the nucleus of the cells, they are lined. Clearly you can see that it's one layer. Okay? But for these pseudo-stratified, you may have cells that are shorter, or there are other cells are bigger. So the nucleus seems to be like in different layers. So you may think perhaps under the microscope that this is a stratified epithelium, but it's not. That is why it's called pseudo-stratified. Okay. So the nucleus, all the nucleus, they appear at different heights. As the others, these cells will be resting, will be on top of a basement membrane. The main function, again, absorption and secretion. And the variety of this one, the ciliated one, is covering the respiratory tract. The other type, according to layers, is the stratified epithelium. The same here, if it's flat, the upper layer, usually the name will be described depending on the upper layer. Okay? If they are flat, we're talking about stratified squamous epithelium. If they are cubes, they are stratified cuboidal epithelium. If they are columnar, stratified columnar epithelium. So in this case, it's not only one layer. Now we have several layers. So it's not as thin as the previous one. So the primary function of this tissue is protection. Okay. The most common type among the three will be the squamous, the stratified squamous epithelium. This is the most common epithelium. The apical cells, remember the apical cells here. The apical cells are squamous, but close to the basal membrane, close to here, the basal part, are cuboidal or columnar. So the name comes from the upper layer, okay? The shape of the cells in the upper layer. And usually they are covering the esophagus, the mouth,
Yes.
the outer portion of the skin as well, here. Right? Cuboidal and columnar are rare in humans. Typically just two layers. The apical part will be cubes or columns. And you can find them in mammary glands, salivary glands, some parts of the pharynx, and the eye.
What is it rare? What does it mean with rare? Rare meaning?
Not common.
So basically, we do have that.
You do, but in only very few places.
Ah.
So it's rare. The most common one is the squamous. We have another one stratified. It's called the transitional epithelium. This is a highly modified type of tissue. It's a stratified squamous epithelium, but it's like a special type, and you can find it lining few organs, covering on the inside of some organs, like the urinary bladder, ureters, and some parts of the urethra. The unusual thing with this one is maybe that it changes the shape if the organ is distended or if it's in the resting position. So the shape of the cells will change also if it's distended or not. The cells of the basal layer, here on the downside, are cuboidal or columnar. But the apical cells are the ones that are going to vary depending if the organ is distended or not. So about the glandular epithelium, actually this consists of one or more cells that will produce and will secrete a particular product. We can identify them as endocrine glands or exocrine glands. Okay. Why do you think would be the main difference? And this is maybe one of the important points. What is the main difference between the endocrine and the exocrine glands? You can have a hint just from the name.
Yeah.
Endo and exo. Yes, you want to say something?
Endocrine glands target other organ in my body.
Not exactly target, but it will secrete.
Secrete.
Yes. It will secrete directly into the blood vessel. Okay. Unlike the exocrine, exo means outside. Yes, and endo means inside. So take that as a hint. Okay. The endocrine gland will secrete directly into the blood vessels. They don't have ducts because they don't need the ducts, right? For example, the thyroid, pituitary. Exocrine, they will secrete, they will empty the substance to the epithelial surface. Okay? Think about your sweat, right? So this is on the outside, or oil glands, you know, liver and pancreas as well. So now let's see the connective tissue. Okay, that's the other major type of tissue. We will see much more detail each of them along the classes. Okay, this is very summarized. So what does the connective tissue do? They will connect body parts. Okay, and they are found everywhere in the body. The main function we mentioned, they will protect, they will support, and they will bind together other body tissues. We have very diverse types of connective tissue. If you think about it, bone is a connective tissue, but also the blood is a connective tissue. Probably these are the ones you could know best. The cartilage is also connective tissue.
Cartilage?
And they look all very different, right? One from the other, but they are all under the connective tissue. What characterizes the connective tissue? They have the cells, but they also have an extra matrix substance that is non-living, so it's non-cells. We will see and try to identify the cell and the extra matrix substance. Okay. The other type of group of tissue is the muscle tissue. We mentioned the main function of the muscle tissue will be movement, right? These are specialized. They will contract or they will shorten, and this will cause movement. But we have three different types of muscle system, of muscle tissue. Usually the big ones, these ones, the ones that are attached to our body that helps us to move. Whenever you contract, you produce a movement. These are called the skeletal muscle tissue. skeletal because they are joined to your skeleton. And you control these muscle voluntarily, right? I decide if I move my arm or open my hands or whatever movement I want to do, it's voluntary. You decide. But the other ones are involuntary, so you have no opinion in these ones. You have the cardiac muscle, the one that is here, building your heart. And you also have smooth muscle tissue, which is in the walls of hollow organs that are, I say, hollow. They have some, a space on the inside, like your stomach or your intestine. Think of your intestine like a tube, but on the inside it's empty, right? Because it has to come the food. Okay. So here is made up of smooth muscle. The same is for your capillaries, your blood vessels, for example. Okay. We'll see more about these when we study muscle tissue, muscle system, which is actually next week. And I will be having a guest speaker for next week. And she will cover muscle. Another tissue is the nervous tissue. You may have been probably very familiar with these pictures. All neurons will receive and will transmit, will conduct these electrochemical impulses from one part of your body to another part. Okay? So the cells in the nervous tissue are the neurons. The major functions of the nervous tissue is conductivity and irritability. Okay, so I receive these signals and I conduct them. And there is a special group of supporting cells that are called neuroglia. They will insulate, they will support, and will protect the neurons. Neurons are very important so that your body can function. So for the next part, actually, I thought maybe, because it's not very difficult, I was going to do wound healing, but I think it's better if I leave you as a reading, and then you can speak up and catch up faster, especially for the class that we need. So I'd like you, the next slides are actually based on this reading, okay? I don't think it's a particularly difficult reading. It is only 2 pages, so it's very short. These two. So what I want you to do is to read these 2 pages, okay? And then you can follow the slides. There, I think most of the information is here. Then you can put your own memos, your notes here. And I think it only also includes developmental aspects, some example. Normal cell growth, and this is enough. And this one, okay? So you can do the reading by yourself. If there is any part that you don't understand, you can ask me later. What I want you to think about here is what is hypertrophy, okay? And what is the difference between hyperplasia and hypertrophy? Okay? Please take note of the questions. Remember, I mentioned you, the final exam is not difficult, but if we leave questions during class, I'll recommend you to actually look for the answers. Okay. So think about this when you do the reading. Okay. And don't remember the review by yourself of the subdivision and the protein synthesis. So you don't have to reread again for the final exam, just read your notes. That will be easier. Okay? You can find the URL videos, I think, in your printouts. Alright? And this is for today. I thought this was for last class, but sorry I couldn't make it.
Thank you.
So this next class is actually the continuation only.
Please show me what is hypertrophy and
the questions.
questions.
Okay, yes, it's not just a moment. There you go.
Thank you. Okay.
Everyone got it? Then now that we are here, so there's only 4 of you. I have 7 students registered for this class. I'd like to ask you so that I can reschedule the supplementary class, unless you rather have a reading. Probably not. Do you have classes on Tuesday?
Tuesday. Tuesday is full.
Full, okay. Who else is full on Tuesday? Classes all day on Tuesday? No class on Tuesday. Classes on Tuesday?
I don't have to class for the fifth period.
You have at the 5th period. Okay. And how about you? Do you have classes?
I have first and second.
Second. 3rd, 4th, and 5th you don't have classes? Do you have class on the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th period on Tuesdays? No. How about you?
I don't have 4 and
4 and 5, but you have 2 and 3, the 2nd and 3rd period.
5. I have 2nd and 3rd.
Period, you have class
Yes.
on Tuesdays. Okay. How about Thursdays?
Thursday.
You have,
Third period is vacant.
okay. 2nd, no.
No.
4th, no.
No.
5th, no.
No.
Okay. How about you?
I only have at the fifth period.
At the 5th period. Okay. How about you Thursdays?
I also have first and second period.
1st and 2nd. 3rd, 4th, and 5th are clear?
Clear.
Wow. You always have the afternoons clear. Okay, never mind. How about you Thursdays?
I have 1st and 3rd.
You have class.
Yes.
Okay. And what about Fridays?
Friday is mostly vacant except 4th
4th
period.
Okay. How about you? You don't have class. How about you?
Only third.
The 3rd
Third.
period you have class.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about you?
2nd, 3rd, and 4th. I have
2nd, 3rd, and 4th you have class. Okay, that is going to be challenging then. Do you want to schedule a supplementary class It will be for probably the skeletal, the next one. We can either do a shortened version of a class, or we can do a reading, but you will have to do the reading. You rather maybe just sit here and listen. Because we missed one class, right? Last week.
Last week.
Yes. So I'm supposed to give that class in another time. So I'm trying to find what time would be better so that everybody can be here. But I think it's going to be difficult because everybody has classes on very different days. Tuesday, Thursday, Fridays are mostly I'm free a whole day.
How about feedback period?
Feedback, that's the last one.
Last one.
Because I'm going most probably away for field work.
Field work.
It's going to be very tight. I don't know even if the feedback I'm also pushing it earlier. Another thing could be I give you the material and you read it by yourself.
Okay.
That works very fine. Be honest, it's okay. Maybe I can give you material and then if you have questions or something, we set up a date and a time and then you come if you have questions about this particular topic and we consider that supplementary class. Would that work for you guys? So it's not compulsory to come. Kind of like feedback. What do you prefer?
Read and
And come if you have questions.
go. Not mandatory.
Okay. That's good. You can be honest, it's okay. It's perfectly fine. Because it happened in the past that I asked the students and very few say, yes, I cannot make that day, I put that day and nobody comes. So I rather know ahead of time that very few maybe are coming. So okay, let's move on then. I know it's not your favorite class, probably. Yeah, I understand completely. So I'm trying to do this as painless as possible. Okay, so we just saw this from the previous slides, right? About the connective tissue. We are going to see a little bit more about each of these types of connective tissue. What is the main two components of these type of tissue? How is bone and blood and cartilage all connective tissues? What they have in common is they will have cells, the cells, and the extracellular matrix that I mentioned before. So connective tissues are made of different types of cells, and different amount of extracellular matrix. Okay, and this is what's going to make the differences. About the cells, it could be fibroblasts, adipocytes, macrophages, lymphocytes, different types of cells. And we will see these types of cells little by little. But usually these cells will not touch each other. Okay? Unlike the epithelium cells that we just mentioned earlier. We mentioned it's like a sheet and the neighboring cells are bound together. Here usually the cells don't touch each other. And they're immersed in this extracellular matrix. That is a substance, but it's not made up of cells. So it's non-living substance. And this is outside the cells. This matrix is produced by the connective tissue cells. So these connective cells will be producing this extracellular matrix. And what is the extracellular matrix? It's made up of water, some proteins, and some polysaccharide molecules. We also have fibers like collagen, elastic and reticular. And imagine, think of this as a substance like a gel. The consistency can go from very fluid to gel-like substance. So it's not completely hard, and it's not completely liquid. This is in general. So that we have different types of connective tissue. We mentioned bones, cartilage, dense and loose connective tissue, and the blood. And all of them will consist of the living cells and the extracellular matrix. And the major differences will reflect the type of cells they are composed of and the functions that they have. So for example, the bone tissue, also called osseous tissue. Osseous comes from bone. Also called the osseous tissue. The cells in this case are called osteocytes. Osteo from bone and cytes from cells. So these are the cells making the bone tissue. Have you seen these kind of pictures before? Probably in high school? No?
No.
No? Okay, I don't want to go into details because there is really a lot of structures and names here. Okay, the main idea here is the osteocytes, or the cells producing the osseous tissue, are located here. Are the yellow things here? Okay, so these are the cells.
We don't have to memorize all those things, right?
No, all those names no. But osteocytes, yes. Okay, so the cells producing this tissue, yes. All, no. It's all right. Unless you want it, of course. So these osteocytes are in these spaces and they are surrounded by extracellular matrix. But in the case of the bone and only the bone, this is very hard. Why is hard this extracellular matrix? Because it contains calcium salts. Okay, but it also contains a large amount of collagen fibers. Okay, as do all the other types of tissues. What is the main function? And this is important here. What is the main function of the bone tissue? The bone will protect and support other body organs. Think about, for example, your ribs. You have here bones and they're protecting the organs that they are inside. Yeah? Another tissue is the cartilage tissue. The cartilage tissue is found in a few places. Here the cell type, the cell producing this tissue is called chondrocytes. Chondro is cartilage. And remember, cytes is always cells. Okay? This is less hard than the bones and more flexible. Okay? From the three types of cartilage tissue, the hyaline cartilage, the fibrocartilage, or the elastic cartilage, actually this one is the most common or widely present. The hyaline cartilage, you can see here from the coloring, I don't know if you can see them, but the light blue is the hyaline, the green one is the elastic, and the red one is the fibro. So most of them is the light blue. So it's really widely spread, the hyaline cartilage. You can find them here in your ribs, attaching the ribs to the sternum. You can find them in the joints. And I don't know if you know, but when the babies are developing, when they are fetuses, before they are being born, actually the skeleton is hyaline cartilage that is gradually being replaced by bone. We have fibrocartilage in the discs between the vertebrae, called the intervertebral discs. You don't see them maybe very clearly, but here is the intervertebral discs. And the elastic cartilage. Remember always your ears. This is elastic cartilage. How do they differ one from the other depending on the amount of collagen and proteins that they have? So another type of connective tissue is called the dense connective tissue. Okay, we have dense and we have loose connective tissue. The dense connective tissue is also called dense fibrous tissue. Here the fibers, the collagen fibers, are the main matrix element. The cell producing dense connective tissue are called fibroblasts. And this is the type of tissue that will make up the tendons, the ligaments, the lower layers of the dermis that we're about to see. Okay, this is a loose, we have a dense connective tissue, we also have a loose connective tissue. But in this case, you can imagine they have more cells and fewer fibers than other connective tissues, especially the blood. And we have three different types of loose connective tissues. Okay, areolar, adipose, and reticular. We'll see very quickly each of them. So whenever you think about the dense connective tissue, imagine your tendons, your ligaments. They are really dense.
Tendons, ligaments.
These are the loose connective tissue. One type is the areolar tissue. It's widely distributed. What it does is cushions and protects some body organs that are surrounding or wrapping the organ. It also plays a role in inflammation because remember that they have cells. And they will hold the organs together as if it was glue. And they are a good reservoir of water and salts surrounding the tissues. The other one is the adipose tissue or the fat tissue. Okay. In this type of tissue, the cells that you can find are the adipose cells or the fat cells. This is also an important tissue. This is a subcutaneous, below the cutaneous tissue. Subcutaneous tissues beneath the skin, under the skin, where it insulates the body and protects from bumps and extreme temperatures. So if you have less adipose tissue, you may feel more the change of the, for example, the cold weather. Okay? And of course it also protects some organs that are covering, like the kidneys. or the eyeballs. The eyeballs are actually the eyes, these. And they also provide a reserve of food. When you are not eating, where does your body will take the energy from? Is from the adipose cells. And you can also find some deposits, some accumulations in the hips and the breasts. So this is how the adipocytes look like. They are completely full with fat, and so the nucleus is pushed to one side. And the other type of loose connective tissue is the reticular connective tissue. It consists of fibers associated with cells called reticular cells. And this is limited to certain sites, certain parts, like spleen, bone marrow, or lymph nodes. And this type of tissue is what will form the internal framework, or what we call the stroma, the internal framework of the organ. Okay. And what about the blood tissue? As ironic as it may sound, the blood tissue is avascular. Remember what was avascular?
No blood.
Yes, no blood supply. So this tissue consists of the blood cells, different types of blood cells. We will see them in more detail when we study the blood. And they're surrounded by this extracellular matrix called the plasma. And the fibers, actually, you will only notice them when the blood is coagulating or the blood is clotting. But they are soluble, so you don't see them when the blood is flowing. What they do, the blood tissue transports gases, respiratory gases, transports nutrients, waste, and other substances. And of course, it's contained within the blood vessels and also the chambers of your heart, inside the heart. Okay? So let's see a little about body membranes and the integumentary system. Do you have any idea what is the integumentary system?
Integral?
Sorry?
Integral.
Integral? No, not really. It's the appendages of the skin, other parts that are appended to this system. If you see on the last slides, for example, the sebaceous glands, sweat glands, hair, nail, these are called the appendages. Okay. So today I would like to cover only the body membranes, and I'm thinking that maybe next time you can read by yourself, or if we have time we will do it, but I'd rather have you reading by yourself the appendages. It's not long, the appendages, and it's rather simple. So let's see about the body membranes. What are they? They're actually covering surfaces and lining cavities, the body cavities. And they protect and they lubricate sheets around some organs. We have two major groups of body membranes. Okay, one is the epithelial membrane and the connective membranes. And this is according to what kind of tissue they are made of. Okay. So let's see a little each of them. Let's start with the epithelial membranes. Basically, the skin. Yeah, cutaneous membrane. This is the skin. The epidermis is a keratinizing, stratifying, squamous epithelium. We just saw this. Remember, what is stratifying?
Layered.
Yes, several layers. Squamous.
Square. Mm. Squamous.
Flat.
Flat epithelium. And many times we say keratinized because it has a protein called keratin. Okay? So the dermis is mostly dense connective tissue and it's exposed to air. Obviously, we see from here, it's exposed to air and it's a dry membrane. Okay? Now this is the mucous membrane or mucosa. Here the epithelium is resting on a loose connective tissue membrane called lamina propria. And it lines all cavities that are open to the exterior. When we say open to the exterior, we are referring to respiratory tracts, the digestive tract, the urinary, reproductive tracts. Why? Because they are connected to the exterior. Correct?
Yeah.
So they are lining all these cavities that are open to the exterior. Because they are continuously bathed in secretions, these are not dry, unlike the skin. So they are called wet or moist membranes. And often this epithelium, this mucosa, is adapted for absorption or secretion of mucus, except for the urinary mucosa. And the other type of epithelial membrane is the serosa or the serous membrane. This has a layer of simple squamous epithelium. What was simple squamous epithelium? Simple because it's
Single layer.
it's a single layer of
Flat.
flat cell. Correct. And it's resting, it's on top of a thin layer of areolar connective tissue. Okay? So this is a very, very thin membrane that is lining the cavities that are close to the exterior. Okay? In this case, these are not open to the exterior. These are close to the exterior. And usually they come in pairs. So you will have two serosas. Okay? One is the parietal layer. We call it parietal layer, and it's attached to the wall of the ventral cavity. And the second pair, the second layer, the second membrane is the visceral layer. Okay. To give you a little idea, check on the next figure. Imagine if you have a balloon and you put your fist inside the balloon. Okay, well it's still like this, inflated. So if I put my fist, then you have part of the balloon covering your face and another one on the outside, right? So here, the one on the outside, the outer balloon wall, is similar to the parietal serous membrane. Okay? And the one that is right on touching your hand would be the visceral serous membrane. Okay? Now imagine that instead of your fist is an organ. Let's say the heart, for example, or your lungs. Okay? So that means that we will have these two pair of serosas covering the lungs or covering the heart. The one on the outside, closer to the wall, is the parietal. And the one right in contact with the organ will be the visceral membrane. Here. Here you can see it. Here and in the lungs also. Okay? And you have another one here in the peritoneum, covering all the intestines. So remember they come in pairs. You will have the parietal and the visceral layer. Okay? But what happens if you have these two layers? If there's nothing, if it's completely dry between both of them, there will be friction, right? So actually they are separated, but there's a very, very thin fluid separating both serosas. This fluid is secreted by both membranes. And what would be the purpose? To make it smoother. Okay, the move between both of them. Imagine your heart when it's pumping or when it's moving like this. The membranes also will have to move with the heart. The same with your lungs. When they expand, they contract. So you have this very thin layer between both serosas. Okay? Oh, you finished? Okay. And these are the locations. The abdominal cavity and its organ, the peritoneum. In this case, it's called peritoneum. Okay? They have this special name for these locations. The serosa, located in the abdominal cavity and covering these organs in the abdominal cavity, is called peritoneum. The ones covering the lungs are called pleura. And the ones covering the heart is called pericardium. Peri means around, cardium comes from heart. Why is this important? Because sometimes you could have an infection, and instead of having very thin layer here between the two serosas, the cells may start to produce more serous fluid, and then the organ will be pushed, will be limited in its functions. Okay. And the other major group, connective membrane, refers to the synovial membrane. This is composed of areolar connective tissue, and it has no epithelial cells. Okay? The synovial membrane will be here. If this is the general idea of a joint, this is the joint capsule. This one here, right? So the synovial membrane will be covering here, will be lining the joint. The synovial membranes line the fibrous capsules surrounding the joints, and they will provide a smooth surface and a lubricating fluid. Many times, if you don't have enough or appropriate amount of fluid, the joint would be very painful, and the movement too. It will limit the range of movement. Just a little about integumentary system. They are composed of the cutaneous membrane, the skin, and the appendages. So when we refer to the integumentary system, one of the big systems, the main systems of the body, we're referring not only to the skin, but also to the appendages. But many times I think probably most of the attention goes to skin. The uppermost layer of the skin is full of keratin. We mentioned this is a protein. And it's cornified, it's hardened. This has a rich capillary network and sweat glands. And many receptors, cutaneous receptors, to process stimuli like touch, or pressure, or temperature, or pain. And they're all in the skin. The main functions. These are the main message that I want you to take home. What is the main function of this system? Most of the function is protection. Okay? To protect deeper tissues from mechanical damages, chemical damage, bacterial damage, UV radiation, thermal damage, from desiccation. What is desiccation? From drying out. It also helps the body not to lose too much heat or to retain the heat if you need it. If you are in a cold environment, you need to retain the heat. It also will help in the excretion of urea and uric acid. This is from the sweat glands producing sweat from perspiration. But it's mostly protection, right? But another important function of this system is to synthesize vitamin D. This is why they say it's also healthy to spend some time outside so that you can synthesize vitamin D. But you have to be cautious, otherwise you can get too much UV radiation, which is not good for your health. So it has many functions, the system. Let's see a little about the structure of the skin. Have you seen these type of pictures before? Maybe at school? Yes? Do you study these kind of things in Japanese school? I'm not sure. Last year I had students from China. They say they study all of these, so it was only a review for them. How about in Japan? Do you study? No?
Not in high school.
Okay. Okay, the basic idea, this is just a cut of the skin. This will be hairs, okay? Hair, some sweat glands, some receptors, capillaries, and so on. This is to see the structure of the skin. Usually we have these two regions, okay? The epidermis and the dermis. Only these two regions are part of the skin, not the subcutaneous or hypodermis region, okay? These two, epidermis and dermis. So these would be the epidermis. Epi, remember, is up or above, and this is the dermis. So in the epidermis, we find stratifying squamous epithelium. Again, remember, stratifying was
Several layers.
many layers of a squamous flat cells. And remember, the name comes only from the upper layer shape of the cells. Okay? And this is capable of producing this protein called keratin. So this is the epidermis, is this part. Okay? And then we also have the dermis, which is this part, up to here. The dermis is composed of dense connective tissue. In the hypodermis, hypo means below. The hypodermis, you will find adipose connective tissue, but this is not part of the skin. And if we see a little more detail of the epidermis, remember epidermis is only this part, okay? It is avascular, meaning that it doesn't have a supply of blood itself, okay? The cell types here are called keratinocytes because they produce keratin, this protein. The keratin is a fibrous protein that will make the epidermis tough, protective layer. Now we have these 5 layers in the epidermis. The very top, the stratum corneum, these ones. But these are actually dead cells. These are dead. They are filled with keratin. The stratum lucidum, this one, stratum granulosum, stratum spinosum, and the stratum basal. So we have these 5 layers making up the epidermis. And I mentioned they are avascular. So actually they will get their nutrients from the capillaries, but here, by diffusion. So the layers that are closer here in the stratum basal are the ones that are more or better fit, more receiving more nutritious substances than the upper ones. The upper ones are dead cells, basically. The cells start dividing here and they are pushed upward gradually. This is why maybe 25 or 45 days, actually all your cells are renewed. You know, when you are exposed to the sun for a long time, then you get tan, right? You get darker. This is because a pigment called melanin is produced when we are exposed to the sun. The cells producing the melanin are called melanocytes. Makes sense. The melanocytes are here. And when they are exposed to the sunlight, they are stimulated and they will produce melanin. So we will get tan, we will get darker. But eventually, we go back to our original skin color, right? Have you ever had a sunburn? Or have you ever been very, very tan? Have you? That after a couple of days your skin come off, right? It's because you are renewing it. Okay? So it makes sense. So that was for the epidermis, the upper part. Okay? The other part of the skin is called dermis. And there are 2 regions here in the dermis. One is the papillary layer, which is this one, the upper part, and the reticular layer, the rest, beneath the papillary layer. The papillary layer is called papillary because it has some projections. It's like a papilla. It lies directly beneath the epidermis, so it's right the next layer after the epidermis. The projections that I mentioned here is these kind of things. These are the projections. These are like papillae. Okay, like the fingers coming here.
Papillae
Yes.
means finger-like.
Not sure if it's finger the meaning, but whenever you hear papillary or papille, It's like fingers. It's like some projections doing like this. Yes. And the other layer is the reticular layer, which is the deepest layer in the skin. It has connective tissue, blood vessels, the glands, the sweat glands, the oil glands, and receptors, different receptors, and some other cells like phagocytes. Have you ever had a burn, maybe? Sometimes if it's 3rd-degree sunburn, or a blister. Have you ever had a blister?
Fire?
Yeah, it could be from fire. You know this, like a bubble.
No.
No, when you use like new shoes, for
Yeah.
example, the friction,
Mm.
and after a while, you may find some like bubbles. Those are called blisters. So blisters actually is when the epidermis and the dermis, they separate. Oh, okay. Yeah.
But how did the liquid form?
Because of the inflammation, the cells starts producing fluid. And this is the last one I want to finish in here. Probably you already know about these. We have whole diverse array of skin colors. Basically, there are these 3 pigments that will contribute to the skin color. One is the amount and the kind of melanin produced in the epidermis. The other one is the amount of keratin in the stratum corneum and the subcutaneous tissue. And the other one is, the other factor that gives this color of the skin is the amount of oxygen-rich hemoglobin, the amount of hemoglobin that you have in your blood vessels. Have you seen maybe sometimes very, very, very white people, and you can actually see their pinkish color? No? Have you not noticed?
Which one?
Very white people, or albinos, people who doesn't have melanin, you can actually see pinkish color in the skin. This pinkish color comes from the hemoglobin, from the blood. Okay, so then next time I will bring you some readings. I didn't have time to prepare more readings, and probably you already have enough with the one I already gave you. I don't want to overload you for the Golden Week. So next time I will bring the reading. We will have, is there any questions, comments, or problems? No? New words? Are you finding many new words?
Many new words.
Many.
Very hard.
I understand, yes. What I suggest you is to make a list of the new words that you are finding. Okay? Gradually, we will continue using them, and you may get used to them. But at the beginning, it's very hard because there are so many new words that if you start looking for them, maybe you will spend half of the class just looking for new words. Make a list of all the words that you don't understand and that they are new. In that way, you will also practice writing them. Okay?
You have to remember all these levels of the stratum corneum, stratum lucidum.
Would be desirable, yes. Some basic things like what are the parts of the skin, epidermis, dermis. What are the layers? What else? The function. The main idea for you is to understand if this is the muscular system, what is the main function of the muscular system? What would be the main function of these organs? for example. These are the main ideas that you have to take in, okay? Details, of course, like layers, yes, it's desirable, it's good to know, but it's not big important, okay? Last year, what I did was to give the students a pool of questions because they were, towards the mid of the semester, they were very worried. What should I study? Everything, what is everything? There is so much material. So what I did with them was to give them questions at the end of the classes. So I give you, let's say, 8 questions or something so that you get an idea of what kind of things I think are important for you to take in. So before the final exam, they had a pool of questions. And basically the final exam, I took some questions from there.
Wow.
It is a lot of to study, but it's easier because we will have quizzes. So questions from the quizzes can also come in the final exam, especially if most of you didn't answer the question. If I see that most of you didn't answer the question, then probably I will put it again in the final exam, so that I'm sure that you study and learn them, right? The quizzes also help you to see what kind of questions I can ask you. They're not supposed to be difficult, okay? Like from here, what would be, I don't know, the main types of tissues? What is a tissue? What is a tissue? Very basic questions, okay? If you find it very hard, and if it helps to have questions at the end of each class so that you can compile the pool of questions, we can do that. Maybe that will help for your studying. Okay? So I have 7 students registered for the class, so 3 are missing today. I actually are more students than I expected. I thought everybody would be gone for the Golden Week. So next class I would want to bring the assignment so that you can start working on the assignment. The assignment will be a presentation, a short presentation. Because there are not that many of you, probably we can do it individual presentation, and in that way that's also easier maybe for you to work instead of doing in pairs of 2 or 3. You never know who really worked more and who didn't work, and there's not enough time for the 3 of you or the 2 of you to present. So the idea would be for you to present maybe the anatomy or a short part, and to submit a summary, very simple summary, short summary of that topic. Okay? I will give you more details next class, meaning next Monday. Hopefully everybody can be here next Monday. Okay? So if there's no questions, yes.
Did you mention guest speaker
Yes. For next class,
for next
I
class?
invited a guest speaker.
Oh,
Actually, I was, the next class after this is supposed to be skeletal system. But because I already scheduled a guest speaker for next class, then we will do muscular system. Okay? And we will manage to do the next classes when I have to do it. So she will revise the muscular system. Okay? What else? The same time, the same place? Basically, I think she will do similar way of lecturing. Okay? She is assistant professor in the School of Public Health. And I'm from Thailand.
Thailand.
Yes. Now you are from?
Brunei.
Eh? Burma.
Brunei.
Brunei. Okay. Okay, so my guest speaker is going to be from Thailand. And she speaks slowly, so don't worry about the speed. Okay. So if there's no more comments or questions, it's okay? So for today is only the reading that I gave you. You already forgot. The reading that I gave you. And that's it. Okay? If you have any problems with the reading, let me know. And we can see them the next class in 2 weeks. No, next class if it's not too long. Okay, so thank you very much and enjoy very much your Golden Week. Stay safe. Okay? Don't drink too much. Don't do risky things. And come back in one piece. Thank you.